Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, The Answer Company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to another edition of Access to Democracy. I'm Bill Raker, your host for today's program. Whether you're a first-time viewer or whether you are a regular viewer of the program, we're happy to have you with us and delighted that you have joined us today. We're very pleased and honored to have as our guest on Access to Democracy today Representative Ginny Klevorn, DFL-42B District. And Representative Klevorn is going to be talking with us about a key leadership role that she has with a really significant initiative that our legislature has underway. But before we focus on that topic, let's have Representative Klevorn tell us a little bit about herself. And I want to start, if I may, acknowledging and congratulating you for being the recipient of the MLC 2024 Legislator of the Year. Representative Klevorn, again, congratulations. Tell us what that's all about. What does that mean?
Well, thank you. For those listening who may not know, the MLC is an organization made up of 19 suburban districts. Their mayors and city managers vote on the Legislator of the Year, and it's usually a distinction given to a legislator who has been available and has worked to meet the common needs of those communities. So it was a great honor and surprise for me to receive that award this year. I wasn't expecting it. And it comes from our work together on land use and planning for our communities going forward. So it was a wonderful way for me to get to meet, work, and interact with all of the city managers and mayors of those communities.
Well, it's great for you to be recognized for your leadership and your accomplishment in that area. Now, there's another thing about you that I hope you will share some more with us, is that you have lived and worked in a number of foreign countries. Mm-hmm. You were in Brussels, Belgium, Sao Paulo, Brazil, maybe other places as well. Mm-hmm. How did those experiences of living and working there help you in your political career and your political achievements? And what did you experience in those countries?
Well, it's always good to get outside of your comfort zone. And so to be the other in a community is very interesting, right? So as a person who had never experienced that in my home country, it was interesting to experience it elsewhere. But what I learned in the big picture is that so much of what people want are the same, no matter where you live. People want to have an opportunity to care and provide for themselves and their families. They want to make sure that their children are educated. They want a job that gives them meaning and purpose. They want health care when they can afford it, that they can afford when they need it. And at the end of the day, they want to retire with $1 in their pocket. Most humans, no matter where we live, want those things. And so working as a legislator, keeping that in mind, that there is more commonality, helps me do my work at the legislature.
Well, that's an important perspective to have, where the focus is more on the things we as humans have in common than it is on the things that make us different. So that's really, I think, an important perspective for a legislator to have.
But always keeping the individual front and center, right?
Oh, yes.
So we are a group, but we are also individual. And so that meeting those human needs is so important.
And we're going to talk about some of the ways that Minnesota is looking at trying to address some of those needs as we get a little further into the interview. So, Representative Klevorn, what sparked your interest to get involved in politics in the first place?
Well, I volunteered on a campaign when I was young. The first presidential campaign that I volunteered on was Jimmy Carter. Oh. So I was too young to vote initially, and then I voted for him in his second election. But to see how individuals at a young age can be involved and make a difference was important to me. The ethic in our family was, it's not will you serve, but when will you serve, and how will you serve? And so my mother made it very clear that we all have a role to play in making our communities better.
And you're passing that along to your family, to your children as well?
Absolutely.
Well, that's wonderful,
yeah.
that you continue to hold those ideals and those aspirations that you experienced as you first got into politics, as you continued your career. How long have you been serving in the legislature now? I'm
currently in my third term and running for my fourth.
And you're actively involved in a number of committees. What committees did you serve on in this past legislative session?
So I serve on 5 committees. I serve as the chair of State and Local Government Finance and Policy. I serve on Ways and Means, Higher Education, and Commerce. Those are 2 separate committees. And then I serve on the Ethics Committee. Fortunately, in the House, we did not have any reason to call the Ethics Committee to order this year, so that's great. And then I serve on a few additional things. So I serve on the Capital Area Architecture and Planning Board, and I serve on the Governor's Residency Council as well.
Well, those are all really important committees to be serving on. And the things that those committees deal with can have great impact on our citizens here in Minnesota. You know, one of the things I mentioned as we started the program that I wanted to focus on is the Legislative Commission on Aging here in Minnesota. And I know, Representative Klevorn, you chair that task force. So let's start by you telling us what that task force, how it got started, why we have it, what its mission is, and then we'll dive a little deeper into some of the things that the task force is talking about and considering.
Okay, so the first question is, how did it come to be?
Yes.
A group of advocates for seniors came to me when I was in my first term serving on the subcommittee for long-term care. And they talked about the needs of Minnesotans who are in long-term care and assisted living. And I worked with them on that issue. And through that work, I also came into contact with individuals living with disability. And I found that work to be fascinating. As the second session came to be for my tenure at the Capitol, these same advocates came to me and said, "Representative, will you help us? We need someone or some entity to coordinate the needs of our aging population. We are supposed to have a plan in place by 2030. We don't see that happening. Can you help us do that?" So I worked with professionals in the aging community. I worked with advocates, community leaders, educators to say, you know, what do you think about this? And so this citizen advocacy really is what brought the task force into being. Now, our goal at the end of the day will be to determine an entity at a cabinet level that would be responsible for ensuring that we have a multi-sector state plan for us to age in community and with vibrancy and dignity. And so that's what our task force is really charged with, reviewing, I would say, the systems that we have. Are they working well, identifying the gaps, and then identifying this entity that would be responsible at the end of the day for overseeing work going forward.
That's tremendously significant about what this task force is undertaking. And you mentioned something, I have a question I was going to ask later, but I'll ask it now. And I don't mean to get a commitment, but is the task force thinking about or prepared to recommend that the state have a permanent cabinet level position whose responsibility is, looking after the aging here in Minnesota?
We have been meeting the task force since August of 2023. That's correct, 2023. And we will conclude our work by January of 2025. And what we have heard over and over and over from our citizens all across the state is that we need a cabinet level position to oversee this.
So that seems very...
I should say a cabinet level entity, not position, but entity.
Right, it would be more than one person if it has a cabinet level responsibility.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So the task force is coming up pretty close to the conclusion of its charter, it sounds like.
That is correct.
So how much more work is there to do on the commission's part of getting their recommendation ready?
We are hoping to put out a draft of our final report in October so that we will have time for public input in November and December, and then present it to the legislature in January. That is what our charge is to do. We have brought in so many experts from all around the nation and experts in aging in our state to provide for us background information and guidance, right? I am not an expert in this field, so I rely on the presentations provided to us. The Board on Aging will present to us in our September 17th meeting a proposal of what they think is best. Other groups are also providing for us information as to what they think would be best. And our job as the task force will be to take that information, review it, and see what we can reach a consensus on. And then hand those recommendations to the legislature and ask the legislature to pick up that mantle and carry it forward.
Then the task force will have done its job, and
Correct.
Then it would be up to the legislature to act ever how they see fit to do that. You mentioned the Board on Aging. Could you mention some of the other organizations maybe that you have sought input from or had some consultations with as you've gathered information and started to form some decisions?
Certainly. We have had many of our agencies, so from the Department of Human Services, the Department of Health, DEED, the Department of Transportation. We've had outside entities like Leadership Council, AARP, Alzheimer's. We've had professors from other states and universities come and talk to us. Workforce is a big part of this conversation. Keeping older Minnesotans in their jobs that they want to maintain, but also having workforce to provide for them. So we have sought guidance about that. We have had other states come and talk to us. We have looked at Colorado, we've looked at Illinois, we've looked at Maryland, we've looked at Pennsylvania, and had experts from those states come in and talk to us about what they are doing, what's working, what's not working, what should they have included. It's a whole array of experts in the field of aging that have come to speak with us.
Well, is there still opportunity for organizations or individuals to have input to the work that you're doing? Or have you concluded
Oh, no,
that?
absolutely. And I would ask you to post the website for the Legislative Task Force on Aging at the end of this program. We are seeking information and public testimony from all across the state. There is a portal where they can provide their input, what has been their experience in aging, what has been their experience in caring for a loved one, what do we need in our state to make it workable for individuals throughout the life cycle? And yes, so there's still plenty of time to give input.
Well, I'm glad that there will still be that opportunity for our viewers who may wish to provide their perspective on the issues that you're dealing with. Who are some of the people that are serving on this task force with you? Were they appointed, and how did they get to serve?
So we intentionally kept the task force small because we wanted to make sure that it was a space to listen and not have too many competing interests at the table itself. So at the table, we have Senate members. We have one majority member, one minority member from the Senate. The same is true in the House. And then we have 4 outside groups that participate. We have the chair of the Minnesota Board on Aging. We have a council member from the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. We have a member from the Disability Council, and also we have a member from the University of Minnesota Center for Aging and Innovation. And those are the members.
All interested parties, all stakeholders in the issues that you're dealing with here. Have there been some surprising revelations that the task force has encountered in the work that it's done so far?
I would say the thing that has been interesting to me is to see how we can agree on really big picture things, right? But the details are going to matter. And the competition for the who and the competition for where. So I always say when writing legislation, you have to ask 2 big questions. Who pays and who benefits? So when you're looking at how broad the scope of what we're talking about is, that has to be front and center. And how are we best improving the lives of Minnesotans every day?
I'm going to remember those 2 questions. I may have opportunities to ask them to some other guests. Who pays and who benefits?
And when I talk about pay, I'm not always talking about cash, right? So in our previous conversations that you and I have had just casually, we talked about those who uncompensated caregivers.
Yes.
Right? That is a tremendous who's paying, right? Those uncompensated caregivers for older Minnesotans are forgoing their employment, forgoing their retirement savings, forgoing their opportunities in life to care for a neighbor, a friend, a loved one. So we always have to keep that in mind.
From your perspective, what more can Minnesota, the legislature, the government of Minnesota do to provide support and help for caregivers, both professional and non-professional caregivers? What more can we do?
You know, Minnesota actually rates very highly in the Older Adult Act world, right? We're rated number 1, I believe, 1 or 2 in the nation. But respite care is something that we have to really focus on for those caregivers. It does take a tremendous toll. We know often the caregiver is deceased before the person that they're caring for because of the stress and the weight and the burden of 24/7 care. So we need to make sure that we have avenues to help those caregivers. But I want to also say, when we're looking at aging, it is more than those who are frail, right? Aging is about vibrancy. It's about living your best life for as long as you possibly can. It's about being intellectually and socially engaged in your community. And how does that happen, right?
Yes, yeah.
So much of the time, the narrative goes strictly to the frail. And if we live long enough, we may all be there. However, it is so much more than that. So keeping public health front and center, right? Delaying dementia by having a community that engages you, it's really important.
Aging is something we all do throughout our entire lives. And there are just various stages of aging where maybe special attention or special needs are identified, and it's up to our government to provide resources in a lot of cases for those things to be realized.
But at the same time, every citizen also has an opportunity to contribute to society, right?
And a responsibility to.
And a responsibility.
Yeah, right.
So for our older workers, how we have 1 million plus individuals in the state of Minnesota who are 65 and older. That is more than we have in young school-age children.
Yes.
So we need to think as we are going forward and planning for aging in our state, how do we reap the benefit of the brain trust that we have developed over the years, right? And so we don't want to have that brain trust be removed from the workforce before they're ready.
Representative Klevorn, I must congratulate you. You prompt me to ask the questions that I want to ask. And one of the questions is, can you quantify the need for what the task force is doing here in Minnesota? How big is that need? How big is that challenge? And what do we need to do to address it?
Yeah, the biggest need that we have is planning, right? We need that entity that is responsible, truly responsible, accountable, but innovative, and who will implement a plan for healthy aging across our state, right? And what does that look like, right? It means that we need to have housing that accommodates people through the life cycle. We need transportation through the life cycle. We need employment through the life cycle. And then we need to figure out, how do we make this work? And again, keeping in mind who pays, who benefits.
One of the things that I'm deeply interested in is how to protect not just aging people, elderly people, but everyone from scams and frauds and all kinds of things that can go wrong because of so many fraudsters that are out there. What more can Minnesota do to protect the consumer? And specifically, I want to ask about your position on the Attorney General's office, where they have made a proposal to create a restitution fund for fraud victims who have court-approved order for restitution. And as chair of the State Government Committee, I think this would probably fall under your jurisdiction at some point in time, if it hasn't already. What's your position on that? Would you support that?
Yes, I would support that. It is well known in our state. Well, let me back up just a minute. In the last legislative session, we did provide to the Attorney General the additional funds he needed to start this type of work, right? So I am wholly supportive of the work that the AG is doing in this area. We have had members of communities all across our state be caught up in internet scams, in dating scams, in telephone scams, and it has cost our seniors their retirement, their health care. It is devastating. And the personal shame that they carry for having been duped. And I always say to these individuals who've reached out to me, you were trusting. This is organized crime. So it is a huge public safety issue as well as a state government issue. So where these crimes are happening, we have to think about, how do we fund a restitution plan and how do we try to recover? A crypto crime, for example, can wipe out your savings in a heartbeat. And once you've given that money to the crypto chain, no way to trace it, no way to get it back. And we have to be really diligent in getting the information out to seniors to be aware of these fraudsters. And they are serious criminals, and we have to prosecute them to the fullest extent.
And as you alluded, it's not the victim's fault.
It is not.
You know, the fraudsters are very smart, and they have a lot of tools and technology. Artificial intelligence now is another tool that they're bringing into play. So it's really important that you're supportive
Yes.
of what we're trying to do here with the Attorney General's proposal. You know, we have about 3 minutes or so left in the program, Representative Klevorn. There's so many more things I want to talk with you about, and I think that sets us up for a return visit, because I know that there are some things you know and some experiences you have that would be important to share with our viewers as we explain what access to democracy really is all about. It's about being knowledgeable, it's about being engaged, it's about participating, taking responsibility, taking accountability, all of those kinds of things. But in the remaining few minutes, are there things that you would like to share with our viewers, that you would like to talk about that we haven't addressed?
Well, there's some interesting things that are happening at the Capitol right now. We have just passed a Capitol Mall Development Framework, and we are looking at how the CAP Board can help the citizens of Minnesota enjoy what Cass Gilbert had in mind with the Capitol lawn. Anybody who's attended an event on the Capitol Mall knows that it's incredibly hot. So having a little tree shade, some benches, a space to honor our tribal nations whose land we are having government, the House seat of government. I invite Minnesotans to pay attention to that and to see how that'll develop over the years to come.
Is that going to be Capitol Park, you're going to call it, or Government Park or something?
I have said Capitol Park would be great, but it is the Capitol Mall. That Capitol building itself is on the historic preservation, is a historic building and is to be preserved for all time. But the lawn is to be enjoyed and to picnic and to just come and celebrate democracy.
And you have festivals there on the lawn for different organizations.
That's
I've been to
correct.
the few of them myself, and
Yes.
it's a great venue for that.
It's a wonderful venue for that.
So what are your plans, assuming that you win the election and you go back to the House for another session? What are your plans, your priorities for the next legislative session? Yeah.
So, as a good representative, I have a few bills that I'd like to bring forward for my Plymouth and Medicine Lake community. So I'll be doing that. I will be working on the legislation that comes out of these recommendations and trying to build a coalition to bring that to fruition, whatever the recommendations ultimately end up to be. I continue to work for our education, for our children, and to make sure that our schools have the resources that they need, and that our cities and communities are all safe, and that people have a warm, safe place to call home.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work that you have done, that you are doing, and that you will continue to do. And we appreciate you, Representative Klevorn, being our guest on Access to Democracy and sharing with us what's going on with the Legislative Task Force on Aging here in Minnesota. We wish you the best and good luck with that, because there are a lot of important implications on the work that task force is doing. So we're looking forward to the report. You say that will be out in October?
The draft report will be out. There is an interim report that is already posted at the LCC website for Google Task Force on Aging, and you can get to that website. And so people can look at the draft report now and see the things that we have, some of the things that we reviewed, and then look forward for the next draft, which will be coming out in October.
And we'll put out on our program the website for the task force where people can go to get information and also provide them an opportunity to provide input.
That would be wonderful. And Bill, thank you. It was great to be with you today.
We've enjoyed our conversation with Representative Ginny Klevorn, DFL District 42B. Thanks for watching Access to Democracy.